I was bored. It was Easter Sunday, so I was like, why not go look at a horse? And found Remy, but he was in really, really poor condition. Professionals, like, it is okay to get a second opinion. Just because your vet says everything's okay doesn't mean another vet may not find something.
Hello everybody, hope you're having a lovely Wednesday. How you doing, Rhi? You okay?
Hello, happy Wednesday. Do you want to update first or shall I?
You go first. How are you doing? How's your week been?
My week's been really interesting. I went for a in-hand hack with Hayley for the first time ever. I've never actually done that with a horse. I wasn't rehabbing.
Where'd you get that idea?
Well, I'll tell you. I was going to say pray tell and got confused in my head because I was don't know. I got the idea from you. So, because Hayley had his little holiday and then my physio came and she was like, oh, he's growing and he's feeling a little tight, so take it easy for the next few days while he kind of works out the work we did together. And I was thinking about how our autumn is quite quiet, and I thought this is a great opportunity for me to spend a bit more time focusing on the hacking alone that we do. So I think I've talked about this before, but if you haven't seen it, there's a video on my highlights under the hacking highlight where you can see just how explosive Hayley was at his worst when I hacked him when he was 5. And he's gotten so much better at hacking alone, no more rearing and things. But I still feel it in his body. I feel his anxiety and I feel that he gets faster as he goes home and things like that. And I would really like to be riding a horse who feels really confident and able to do the task and enjoys hacking alone. So I was talking to Miri about how to kind of help him with that, because I've tried the whole stopping hacking alone and just hacking with friends. He's really confident in front with other friends. We've tried short hacks and then building it back up. I've tried all of that and I can do it, but it's not perfect. And so Miri was like, why don't you try going on foot with him? Do the groundwork patterns before you leave. And then every time he gets a bit anxious, groundwork patterns again. And it was super interesting because I am not ashamed to admit that I went into it being like, this is not going to do anything, honestly. And I know that's a bad thing to say, but it is true. I was like,
it's good to be honest.
It's not going to show anything up. I was like, he's just going to follow me around like a dog and that's going to be it. And well,
lo and behold,
5 minutes in, there's a dog on the other side of the hedge and he goes really, really up. And I was like, interesting. And then I sort of like, he's almost really sitting behind me, like not really walking out. And then we met another dog and I did a few groundwork patterns and then I stood and we watched and this dog went past and he just like went really anxious, like to the point where I thought he was going to turn tail and run home. And I did the groundwork patterns again and again, and for a few minutes I was like, this isn't working. He's just spinning around me in a wild sort of circle. And I was like, have faith. I was like, keep yourself calm, breathe, like just keep trying, give him a break if he needs it. And he came right back to me, and it was really interesting to see the reflection of like how he is under saddle versus on the ground, because it's all the same, it's just a different level. Like we got halfway and he starts rushing up behind me trying to overtake, which is what he does when we go home when we're riding, is like he gets faster and faster because he's like, let's just get home. And I was saying to Miri, I rode him around the same ride today and had the groundwork halter on, and it just feels like now that I've got these patterns, I'm able to have this conversation with him where he goes, oh, I'm feeling a bit anxious about that thing over there. And I'm like, yeah, totally valid. How are you feeling in your body? Can I help you feel better in this moment? And he goes, oh yeah, okay, that actually does feel better. Thank you.
I remember. I remember that I can actually come back to myself. That. Yeah.
And then a few minutes later he goes, well, I'm actually quite anxious about getting home, so I think we'll just go a bit quicker. And I go, yeah, totally valid. How are you feeling in your body? Do you remember that thing that we did? And he goes, oh yeah, I remember. Okay. And it's just a really funny thing. And I'm really enjoying it. It's making me feel very curious and happy that I will hopefully make him feel like really good. Because that's what I want. I just want a horse who feels as confident on his own as he does when we're out on these fun rides with friends or when we're at a lorry park and he's just like enjoying himself and having a nice time. So
I think that is the reflection. It is not even that he feels... It's not that he just feels okay on his own. It's that he feels okay in himself when he's on his own. Yeah. And it's like that connection in the body. Like where does that connection go? We have a new horse actually, and this is very obvious in him. So he is older, he's 17 actually, and he has come because his owner was really struggling with any kind of consistency of rehabilitating him. And she won't mind me saying this, but he had kissing spine surgery. He had the ligament snip when he was 15, and the vets gave her 6 weeks worth of rehab for a 15-year-old horse.
And
15 years. Yeah, 15 years. Yes, absolutely. 15 years of his life he spent in that way. And they said, right, we'll do this surgery, and then 6 weeks, you'll be back riding. And she is a wonderful, knowledgeable person who has understood and read those situations. But the reason why this is interesting reflection, not because Harley needs kissing spine surgery, but because it is what this horse is struggling with is a complete lack of safety in his own body. He literally doesn't want to be in his body, and his posture is very obvious of that because he's got an upright neck, a dropped in the back. Everything is like the wrong way up because being in his body has for a long time felt very unsafe because of his posture, because of the way he holds himself. And then because of that, he then has very bad anxiety with leaving other horses. Even if there's another horse there, if he has decided that one horse solves the problem for him, he finds it very difficult. And I believe that the reason he finds it so hard is because he doesn't want to be in his body. And so when you were explaining that just then, saying, hey, how do you feel in your body? That is so powerful because the human environment is a really strange place for a horse, actually. And all these things that we expect them to be able to do, like go away on their own to a foreign place with no other horses, with us. If we are not an adequate herd member for them in that moment and we can't help bring them back to themselves through regulation, then we are no good. And as you experienced, it gets worse and worse, and then it's explosive. And thankfully, obviously, it's much better. He's more grown up. You notice things smaller. It hasn't got as bad. But I don't know if you remember ages ago, we spoke about this, and I was talking to you about like moving his body from the saddle.
Yeah.
You were talking a bit about, I was talking a bit about like pushing energy out when the lid is on.
Yes,
like the toothpaste tube.
Yeah.
I think season 1 we talked about young horses. And this is that moment now where you have gone back to the groundwork from the ground, not on his back, and you've said, how do we move the energy? And you saw that energy. It ran around you to start with. And then it came a little slower because the energy went out of the body.
Yep.
The dog brought the energy, it got stuck in his body, you then moved the energy, and then you could send that energy away as such, and you gave him that through that regulation from the ground. And actually, this evening after our podcast recording, I'm going live with my patrons on my community, and Rhi, when I tell you the chat that we are having, well, you can probably see it, the community chat that we have, because Rhi's one of my patrons also. A gifted patron. She has been a gifted patron for a long time, and you can actually now give other people patron membership, which I didn't know, which is really cool. So like if you wanted to give it to somebody, you could gift them it with you pay for it, they get the benefit. Anyway, I digress. And we have this community chat, and the conversation that is going on there was somebody yesterday and they said, I'm on my own a lot of the time with my horses, and I feel very on my own a lot of the time, and I'm so grateful to have found this conversation, this community, these people of like-minded. And I think I saw some of the comments on your posts that you've done this week about the conversation around Harley and hacking, and I think, wow, yeah, this is amazing. And a couple of people have come to me from the podcast, so if that is you, thank you so much. I am so grateful of you that my patron community is a magical thing but also supports me and allows me to do the work that we do. So yeah, just a lovely reminder of coming back to community, coming back to our horses, working from the ground before we ride, seeing problems from the ground rather than just the saddle. And like you said, you didn't expect to see it from the ground, but there it was.
And I think it also is like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to wait until the problem is explosive or until you're rehabbing. Like, it was really funny. I was coming back with Harley, and my friend, who I haven't seen for a couple of weeks, she's been on holiday, she came out of her car and she was like, "Oh, is he okay?" Because I was walking with him on the ground. And I was like, "Oh yeah, he's fine." She was like, "Oh, but you're back on board." And I was like, "Oh yeah, his break's done. We've been fun riding, whatever. I was, testing this thing out to see how it feels." And I think it's also treating this training like it doesn't have to be a big undertaking. Like, for me, I'm like, "Oh, this is a fun autumn project. Like, we've got a bit of a quieter time. Let's test some new things out. Let's see what we can learn." It doesn't have to be this big rehab moment. Like, you're never going to get in the saddle again. Like, I was saying on my Instagram today, like, yes, I rode him today, and that probably isn't the perfect way to do it, but I'm a human and I wanted to ride my horse and I didn't have time to do it on the ground. And it's okay to test things out and try and come back to it again. And just do
And
it.
when Rhi said that to me when we had our little preamble, I said to you, and if it had not gone well, Rhi had prepared herself and taken the rope halter with her under the bridle. So if it had in fact gone wrong, she would have got off, gone with the rope halter, repaired it. But it's like that. The groundwork is like a way of being with the horses, and it doesn't just mean that it's the only thing you do, but it's that how can I integrate this way of understanding energy, of understanding movement, that how can I integrate that into the way I do everything with my horses, because that is where the power is.
Yeah.
The power of the consistency.
You had a special guest at your yard this week.
Oh my God. I think I might be a bit in love with Tom Broadbridge in like the most friendly way. He called me an angel all day, and he called Blondie Poppet, and it was, he is everything a horse person should be. And
Tom, just to introduce him,
in case you've got no idea
came
who
on.
I'm loving.
Yes, if you hadn't listened to the last season, he came on the episode with
Lily Wilson.
He came on the episode with Lily Wilson when we talked about the I think we called it the truth of barefoot or something like that. The truth about barefoot, and so he gave a ton of advice there as someone who trained as a traditional farrier and now kind of has moved towards a barefoot situation. So he went to visit you on your yard, which is cool.
So he came, and my own farrier was very, I think the word is magnanimous, where you are very like open-minded, maybe.
I don't know what magnanimous means. I'm sorry. I've heard it, but I couldn't give you a definition.
I'm trying to be smart. Anyway, my everyday farrier was very open-minded, which is really rare. I've had some interesting altercations. Not altercations, it sounds like I've knocked a few farriers out. No, I've never done that. But I have had interactions with multiple farriers that are not very open. And, farriers have to know what they're talking about. They hold a lot of power when it comes to a horse's health. And so I said to my farrier, I said, I would really like for Tom to come, spend some time with us and, help us with the horses. And if there's anything that he feels we could be doing better, then I would like him to be able to give us that opinion. And that's obviously a bit of a difficult thing because nobody necessarily wants to know they're not doing a good job. But actually my farrier was very open and took it really well. And there were some changes that we needed to make. And I think that it's down to the fact that Tom has spent the last 15 years, training from a standardized farrier route into solely being a barefoot farrier. So what that means is he doesn't put any steel on a foot ever again. He says bare feet are the gold standard, barefoot supported by a boot is the silver standard, bronze is a barefoot supported by a plastic composite shoe in certain situations. And that's really interesting. But he said the number of horses, and going back to our conversation before, the number of horses that actually require a plastic composite is very few. And actually they can be really expensive and aren't totally needed a lot of the time. And he was talking about how actually like horses with healthy functioning hooves should be able to walk on tarmac no problem at all.
Yeah.
There will be, he said, the best practice is to, when you go hacking, is to be able to get on and off a bit, and if you need to, put your boots on to ride across the really stony bit, but then when you're on the concrete, you don't need them necessarily. And I think the interesting thing with that is what he's saying is you're okay to ride with your boots sometimes, but most of the time you probably can ride without them, is what he's trying to say. And actually we need to get the hooves to a point where they're functioning in a comfortable, healthy enough way that you don't need the boots at all. And I love that mindset. Like, how do we get the horse to a place that it is functioning itself? And he encourages quite a long trimming cycle, like no less than 6 weeks, which is interesting. And then he's encouraged me to do some stuff. Like, there are some things that I can be doing, like in certain areas of the feet, just to make sure I'm keeping on top of things. It was a day where I felt incredibly grateful. I wrote a post about it, but I felt grateful of my farrier being open. I felt grateful of Tom coming and giving us that time. I felt grateful of all of those horses that come through my life that are in allowing me to learn, but also allowing me to teach others. And yeah, it was really cool. And like, Blondie really liked him, which was nice. And yeah, like I say, he kept calling her Poppet, and it was just so sweet. So we have her in the barn with a lead rope on both sides, so that she's sort of in one space, so that she does sort of need to stay and go through it, because she would just walk away potentially. And there are moments sometimes where we've got to do the slightly hard thing. So we kind of do it in like in the cooperative sense. Like, I can trim her feet myself loose in the stable, but when there's a bloke involved, we have to have a bit of restraint. And I'm there at the front end supporting her, rewarding her when she's doing the right thing. And he'd like go to her and he'd be like, "This one please, pop it." And she'd pick the foot up, and I'd Blondie, pop it. Like, God, some people, my vet calls her the assassin, because he's not got the right mindset. And when she'd pick the foot up, he'd be like, "Thank you so much, darling." And then he would do what he had to do. Then he'd give her a little break. And it felt so peaceful, his visit, you know. And he kind of like healed a little part of me that I love my farrier currently. I think he's a wonderful guy, but I have parts of me that have been damaged by professionals before. And Tom just reminded me how much those of us who work with horses really truly love horses. And it was just wonderful. It was such a cool day, and I'm so grateful of the opportunity, and grateful of Tom for reaching out to me all that time ago, because Tom originally got in touch because he's invented these insanely cool hoof boots, and I got to see one yesterday.
Did you? Because they were prototyped when we were talking to him last.
Yeah. They're being released in March, and they're gonna change the game. The sole moves complete, like all of it moves individually. So if they have like a straight part of the wall, it becomes straight for the foot, but then it can still move back if they need it to. I can't explain it. I took a little video of the way that they move, and I'm hoping I'm allowed to share it on my social media, because I said to Tom, I was like, this is genius. Like, yeah, genius. He's a genius in so many different ways, and he's such a nice guy too. So that was my week. Other than that, I've had a bad back, and it's been pretty rough going actually, and I had a bit of a ropey week, to be honest, and I've got, as I've said before, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and I can't wait to talk about it, but I can't talk about it at the moment. No, I'm not pregnant, by the way, for the people that keep asking me.
My mum, literally, I was saying this to me because we keep saying she's got something going on behind the scenes, and my mum was like, "Is she pregnant?" And I was like, "No, mum, it's not that."
I had a man ask me that, like, I had a man the other day. You thought I might be as well.
No, but like when we talked about it, I was like, "This is what people are going to think," because it's one of those things that feels quite long term, and you don't want to say too early, and like all the things.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
yeah, cute.
All will become clear soon. Do not worry. But so other than that, I'm sat here wrapped with an electric blanket wrapped around me because my ribs are in spasm, and I literally, one of the days this week, could hardly sit up straight. So it's been pretty rough going, but we're getting there. We're doing better. And just a reminder for me to slow the F down again, because I'm like a snowball, I think, you know. I like start feeling a bit better and I'm like, yeah, look at me with all this amazing capacity. And then the snowball gets too big and punches me in the face. And I'm like, I think I need to slow down.
Yep. Well,
so there we go.
Today's conversation will be somewhat of a warm mug of tea.
Yeah, a gentle meander, I feel.
Yeah, gentle meander. So we are really excited to have Hayley from BL Horsemanship join us today. And I'm sure Hayley will give her own introduction as to how she got to where she is, so I won't steal her thunder. But Hayley has a really interesting point of view when it comes to natural horsemanship, very kind of R positive. And what I think is most interesting for me about following Hayley is that she currently has a young horse called Remy. And I believe she bought Remy as a yearling. And since she bought him, she has been basically doing everything from the beginning, barefoot, R positive, cooperative care. And so it's really cool because you're getting to see Remy grow up in like what would be, I'm not going to say perfect because that puts a bit too much pressure on her, but what would be a really almost pure approach to R positive and cooperative care and everything else. And so we're starting to see him grow up and try all these things like, there's a thing she does in the school. It's not a chaos tunnel, but she calls it something like that, where he like walks through cones and poles and stuff like that. And that's really cool. And I'm just really excited for when she starts to back him, because I just think it's going to be really cool to see how he evolves. So just excited to hear that from her, really. And I know you love her too, Miri.
Yeah, Hayley came and did some R positive stuff with me and Blondie early doors when I was really struggling with like putting a head collar on. And so she taught me about consent and stuff. And the thing that I love, I love Hayley as a person. She's become a close friend of mine and we talk a lot about hard light things in life. And, you know, I think Instagram friends, as we have learnt, are amazing because you feel this symbiosis with somebody at a distance, and you start following them and then you send them a message one day and you're like, hey, you seem really cool, and they say, oh my god, you're cool too, and then you kind of talk. It's kind of like dating, I suppose. And then sometimes you end up meeting that person in person, sometimes you never do, but you still remain friends with them. And it's just, I don't know, Hayley has got such a pure soul when it comes to how she sees horses, and she's had some really difficult times with horses and has had a lot of hard luck, I think. Rescued a horse and it had, you know, she had chronic pain and she really, been through it. And I'm really looking forward to us talking to her today because I think that she has an amazing story and a really powerful message to share that transcends what she's doing on a day-to-day basis. So without further ado, welcome, Hayley.
Before we dive into this conversation with Hayley, I'll take a moment to thank our sponsors today. And we can give something back to our sponsors of season 4, because in episode 1, you will have heard us talking about Quaker, a very wonderful horse that captured everybody's hearts. And Quaker is now available to sponsor. His story, his softness, and the way he's adapted to his new life at the Horse Trust has really stayed with us all. So we're thrilled to share that you can now be part of his journey in a really special way. Sponsoring Quaker means you directly contribute to his lifelong care, from his daily feed and farrier visits to his gentle retirement surrounded by friends and familiar faces. It is also a way to stay connected to him. When you sponsor Quaker, you'll receive regular updates, photos and stories from his life at the Horse Trust, so you can keep up on how he's doing and see the difference your support makes. You can sponsor Quaker from just £4 a month, with bronze, silver and gold tiers. Each level comes with lovely extras, from a welcome pack and seasonal updates to a cuddly flopsy toy or even a season pass to visit. The best part? Every penny goes directly to Quaker's care, and yes, sponsors are welcome to visit him in person. Just drop the team a quick message beforehand so they can make sure he's around to say hello. Quaker captured our hearts across the UK and now he needs yours. This is your chance to be part of his next chapter. Visit horsetrust.org.uk/sponsor to find out more and become one of Quaker's sponsors today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, Hayley, we're so happy to have you. We are genuinely so excited. Tell us a little bit, because we've talked a little bit before you joined about how we know you, but give us your background and what you do and how you got to where you are.
Yes. So my name's Hayley. I'm 28 and a passion of mine for years has been welfare and emotional well-being of horses. It didn't always start that way though, and it has been something that's grown on me over the past few years. I'm sure we'll get into how and why. But yeah, I'm all about welfare, positive reinforcement training, and just listening to our horses and having a deep connection.
And yeah, we touched very briefly on Bronte, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about her and how it led to the work that you do now.
Yeah, of course. So to start with, I was very traditional. I learned how to ride in a traditional riding school when I was younger. And then I did have a bit of a break through like teenage years and adulthood. And then when I got back into horses, it was traditional again. I was riding all of the time. My goals were kind of riding based, and I didn't really know much other than that. But then I rehomed a horse in 2019 from the RSPCA, and her name was Bronte. And she was supposed to be this young horse, this prospective, learning together and riding all of the time. And we had hopes to compete and do all of the things now that I'm totally out of that world now. But yeah, so she had a lot of issues that we thought were behavioural. So, we spoke to all of the professionals, trainers, looked for advice online, and we just didn't really get anywhere. She's very reactive, very spooky. She was a chestnut mare as well. So unfortunately, we had to deal with a lot of people stereotyping her, putting it down to her colour, her gender. And actually, it was all chronic pain. But I feel like back then in 2019, it wasn't like what it's like now. But like social media was like riding, competing, matchy sets. There was nothing really about welfare or poor performance or chronic pain. So I felt very alone. And that's then when I changed my socials to talking about Bronte, all of her issues with chronic pain, how I was managing that. And then through that, I've connected with people like yourselves and many others. But yeah, she was a very troubled horse that a lot of people didn't understand, and that's what my page was about, was trying to raise awareness of the issues that we were going through, that it wasn't behaviour, it wasn't that because she was a chestnut mare, it was actually because she was uncomfortable in her body.
And can you help, for people who haven't seen your page, could you give us a couple of examples of some of the things that Bronte would do that people would say, it's just her being a chestnut mare, and that you were like, actually, this is what it ended up being?
Yeah, there was a few things. Mainly, she didn't like to be touched or groomed or rugged. Trying to pick her feet out was very, very hard. Anything to do with physical touch, she was just so reactive. She would kick out. She would try and just barge through me. So that's how she got the reputation of being very bolshy and a young ginger horse, when actually it really wasn't. And she would either have two moods, and they would be reluctant. So she was very reluctant to move forward, reluctant to do the things that I was asking of her, or she was off the chart reactive. So spooking, rearing, bucking, kicking, biting, all of the like really, really reactive signs that we see. So it was intermittent. One day she could be really laid back and reluctant and a bit sticky. And then the next day it would be rearing, cow kicking, chasing other horses, barging through me. Just a very unhappy horse.
If you feel comfortable, could you tell us what happened with Bronte and kind of the legacy that has developed into what you do now?
Yes, yeah, of course. So we had a few years of getting her comfortable. Once we knew what the pain was, she was rehabilitated to the best that we could. She was treated, and we did find a bit of a management scheme for her. But then sadly, in winter of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, she declined rapidly. I was very open, so I did talk a lot about this on my social media. But we couldn't carry on keeping her comfortable anymore. So I made the decision to have her put to sleep. She was only 8, so it was quite difficult. It did come with a lot of judgment as well, but I guess everybody wasn't seeing the side that I was seeing every day. It was all day, every day. She was in so much pain. She wasn't even comfortable in the field. So she was put to sleep in 2023. Had to think there, time goes so quick. 2023. And once I lost her, I was very open about why I made that decision, talked about quality of life despite age, and did a lot of advocating on that side. And then I changed my social media from like general updates and life with B to Bronte's legacy, BL Horsemanship, where I talk about chronic pain, welfare, body language, behaviour modification, everything that kind of comes into that, sort of listening to horses. So yeah, so I post, sometimes I'll still post things about her now, but a lot of the time it's just Remy's journey, which I'm sure we'll get onto later.
Did you, at some point throughout this journey, did you like take any qualifications? I feel like you have got qualifications in like equine science.
Yes, that's right. So I did.
Even, sorry.
Yes, yeah, behavioural science, that's the one. So behavioural science and, behaviour modification. I did a lot of self-learning, but also did qualifications. And I did plan to become like a behaviour consultant. And I did dabble a little bit in case studies along with the learning that I did. But I felt like it really affected me. Actually, I was taking on a lot. It was really affecting my mental health when you realise you can't help every single horse. I know that you'll know how that feels, Miri. So then I kind of decided just to keep the social media as a hobby and more of just general awareness than a job. But it is something that I'd like to get a better balance of and try and maybe get back to that one day.
I really hope that you do. Hayley and I have spoken a lot, like privately behind the scenes, obviously, and I'm like, Hayley, you have so much to give, and I do think there is I've only just really found my groove with that side of things. It takes a long time, and I think it's because you really feel like you need to have a lot of resource to rely upon, and a lot of a large like bank of experience, and I think that's the only thing that happens with that is just time and doing it. So I agree. I get that. Can you tell us a bit about Remy? So where you were at after losing Bronte and how he came into your life, because I know that is pretty cool bit of the story.
Yeah, it is very special. So the plan after losing Bronte was to take BL Horsemanship and run with it and never have a personal horse again, but just work with clients' horses. And I did have a plan of just working with other people, using their horses as case studies. That would be the content. I couldn't emotionally connect to another horse again. I felt very guarded about getting into that because I just knew I've been through so much. And before Bronte, I had lost 2 other horses as well. So I lost 3 in the space of a few years. So it was all very traumatic and didn't want another horse. And then one day I got a call from a friend about a colt. We didn't really know colour, breed. Then I was bored. It was Easter Sunday. So I was like, why not go look at a horse? And found Remy, but he was in really, really poor condition. He wasn't called Remy then. He didn't have a name. He was living in a dirty barn with cows, goats, and other horses. And then when I turned up and it was this chestnut, I was like, this is a sign. So it might have been like the craziest decision ever. He was feral, he was intact. Like it was just so impractical. But he came home.
He is gorgeous. I always think, obviously, because I'm, got Harley on the brain, I'm always think he looks a little bit like a miniature Harley, but he's just got this beautiful face. Like the look on his face all the time is just so, he's just so sweet and kind and curious. And he has this wonderful face that's just like, I just love my life. Like that's the vibe I get from him. And it's been really cool watching you, like watching him grow up with you. I'd love to hear so talk to us about the beginning with him, because you do cooperative care, you are positive with him. So talk to us about the beginning and his first few years.
Yeah, so I knew when Remy came home the path that I wanted to take, and I was already well into the positive reinforcement life then. But because I had this horse that had never been touched and never had any experiences, I was like, I've got such a good opportunity to just like take this and make him into the most curious, trusting horse ever. So I knew I didn't want to use any escalating pressure. I didn't want to scare him, didn't want to force him in anything. So he came to me, he had a head collar on that was so tight, it was literally digging into his nose. God love him, must have been on for a long time. And a lot of people online and in person mentioned getting that head collar off straight away, just grab him, take the head collar off. I was like, no, like start as you mean to go on. I want to go very slow and I want everything to be on his terms. And that's what it was. I spent a lot of time in the early days just sitting with him, and he would just come over to me. I wouldn't move, wouldn't stroke him, wouldn't grab him, just let him come over. And then gradually over time, he became more curious about me. He wanted to be scratched, so then we found something that he enjoyed. And then it was all in maybe a week or 2, I was able to get the head collar off, and that was totally him coming over cooperatively, lowering his head, and the head collar came off, and that was such a big milestone. I feel like it represented a lot of trust as well, even in just such a short amount of time. And then from there, just shaped on it, really, just built on it. So we did a lot of positive reinforcement of just being able to touch him, and then self-halter, so put a nice, well-fitting head collar back on, being able to lead him, take him out in the field, groom him. Like the first few months was just normal horsey life, getting him to have horsey friends, getting his body feeling a bit better. And then, yeah, now he's perfect. We do like bits of groundwork, but he's only 3, so we don't do anything crazy, but just basic groundwork patterns, target training, grooming, body awareness, and gonna just keep building that. And then when he's ready, hopefully be a ridden horse one day.
It was really interesting, Rhi, what you said, and it's so cool, right? This, because what you said, Rhi, was like his face is so soft and so open and so like, I love my life, right? And I think this is so important to talk about, because I know, Hayley, you've spoken about this a lot on your social media about like the pain face, and actually I've actually planned a post because of this topic, because I took a video. I went to record a video, an Instagram story this morning while I was sitting at my kitchen table having had a piece of toast, and I looked in so much misery because my back has been really bad. Like my whole face was just really scrunched up. And I think I wondered, Hayley, if you could talk a bit about like what you've learned about a horse's face and what it shows us, because I do think, you know, maybe you could just share a couple of things that people could become aware of, because I know what my face looks like when I'm in pain. I saw it this morning, and like I say, I planned to do a post like, this is a human in pain, this is a horse in pain. I obviously have Blondie, and she has chronic issues that we're working on. And when you talk about Bronte, I find myself really making sure I'm like, is she comfortable there? Is she comfortable there? Because yes, she is very comfortable in the field. She's very regulated a lot of the time. I'm not riding her again at the moment. We've had some backward steps because of the hard ground and side bone and stuff, and we've just recently done some x-rays, and I'm here, there I am, making sure that I am, you know, not having an unhappy horse, but I'm not asking her to do anything at the moment. But it's just, if you could talk a little bit about pain face and what you have learnt, and maybe some things that you could share, because I think you noticing that, Rhi, you're maybe noticing it from like a lovely, like, he just looks so happy, not realising the importance of how his life
100%.
has given him that.
It's like, and just, sorry, I know we're interrupting you, Hayley, but it's like
okay.
he radiates that, and it becomes really noticeable with him when you're on your account versus when you see other people's horses, including my own. Like, the reason I noticed the ulcer was because I noticed a slightly pinched eyebrow on Harley, and it was so small that, like, and I just don't know if I'd have noticed that a few years ago. Whereas when you look at Remy, you can really see, it really stands out. Anyway, you go, pain face.
So their overall body and the context and the environment is really important. But for me, especially with people just starting out, I always recommend looking at the face and the eyes. So the key areas are the ears, the eyes, and their muzzle and their jaw. Once you start to notice this pain face, you will see it everywhere. Just a heads up, it can then be quite difficult. But the eyes are really important, so they can have tension above the eye, and it kind of looks like a triangular wrinkle. That's normally a very common sign of pain. When a horse is feeling good and they're comfortable, there should be no wrinkle there. The eye should be really soft, like Remy's is, like ours are if we aren't in pain. It's like squinty look. And they carry a lot of tension in their face and their jaw. You often see kind of prominent veins, and it almost looks like they're sucking in. They're kind of holding a lot of tension in there, and then their mouth and their muzzle can be tense, very shut. It's not open. It's not. Their nostrils. There's also lots of interesting resources on this, but their nostrils change shape as well when they are in pain. So I would highly recommend looking at the equine grimace scale, and it starts off with a horse not in pain, moderate pain, like severe pain, and you can really see the difference. You know, their ears will be tilted back. They'll have that tension above the eye and that sucked in muzzle. Whereas a happy, comfortable horse should be very soft everywhere, soft muzzle, soft eyes, happy neutral ears.
Do you also think that this can have something to do with, that it can be to do with like stress too? Like if a horse has separation anxiety, for example, you can see those same things there too?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So when a horse is stressed, they will have that worried eye and the tension above the eye. So it isn't always a pain face, but that's why it's important to look at the context and their overall body. So if you were taking a horse away from its friends and it had the worried eye and the tense muzzle, it is probably just feeling very uncomfortable and tense and missing its friend. Whereas when you look at the overall body and the environment, if the horse is just in the field or in the stable and it looks like it's relaxing, but actually it's showing a lot of these signs in the face, maybe shifting weight of the body, tail swishing, that's then when we're looking at pain and discomfort. So context is important as well.
I'd love your opinion, Hayley, on finding the right edge of the boundary. Miri and I have talked about this before, where you're pushing a horse's comfort zone to help them learn something or to help them cope with something in the human environment, but you're not going over their threshold. And this is often used as an argument against natural horsemanship online, where people are like, well, if we can't ever do this, then what's the point? Let's just leave them in a field. And that's the extreme end of the argument. So when you were working with Remy, how do you find the edge of the boundary and know when is enough and when is too much?
Yeah. So this is why listening to your horse is important, because they've all got very different thresholds. So I could sit here and explain about horses' thresholds, but actually they're very different. So what goes into their threshold is how they're feeling in their body as well. So a very comfortable horse will naturally have a bigger threshold than a horse that's in chronic pain. Like what Miri said, dealing with back pain, her threshold today will be lower than maybe our threshold, because we might not, well, I don't know if you've got back pain, but I don't. So finding out their threshold and not pushing over that. So, and learning about the subtle signs of stress. So if Remy does ever show these worried eyes or displacement behaviours, he's looking away, he's maybe rubbing his face on his leg, like evasion behaviours, that is a sign for me that he's not comfortable. And where I'm at in my journey, I don't want to push him over that, because I don't want him to have a negative experience. I don't want him to get hurt or break that bond of trust we have. I would say for me, it's really important to not push past their subtle signs before we get to the big reactive signs. But it doesn't mean that we can't do anything with them, because really we need to be figuring out why their threshold is low before then we start asking these questions.
And it's all of those different things, isn't it, that can go into that cup of,
Yes.
acceptance. No, that's the wrong thing to say, but that bucket of tolerance.
Yes.
What is already in there that might be meaning the next thing can't go in. Is the food appropriate? Is the diet? Let's try that again. Is the diet appropriate? Is the environment appropriate? Is the tack appropriate? Is the training appropriate? All of those things I think are so commonly underappreciated, that can be adding pressure. And I know, Hayley, you and I share very similar view on this when people say, oh, back, teeth, saddle have been checked.
Yeah.
Hayley just had a little fit in the background in case you don't see this moment on. But can you tell us why you find that a difficult sort of phrase that gets rolled out? Go on, Rhi.
Well, just for context, because I appreciate people have different levels of experience in the equestrian space. This is a term that people tend to say when they go online and they look for advice. They'll say, my horse is doing XYZ behaviours, or it won't stop rearing, or whatever. They won't stop bucking. Saddle, back and teeth have been checked, or whatever. I can't remember the three you said, but there's always the same, back and teeth.
Yeah.
And that's their blanket way of being like, so it's definitely not pain. And so I need other solutions to the problem. So anyway, carry on, Hayley.
Yeah, thanks, Rhi. That was helpful.
It was. Thank you. So there's two different parts of that argument that I don't like. So the first one is there's so many more parts to a horse than their back and their teeth. There's internal parts, there's their emotional well-being, for one, which can be affected when they're in pain. But then the second part of the reason that I don't like that is we now know we can't physically rule out pain. So vets can do all of the checks, the workups, the ultrasounds, the x-rays. They may not find a problem, but it doesn't mean that horse isn't in pain. Now, I didn't really realise that until I went through health problems myself. So doctors would say, yeah, you're healthy, bloods are fine, this scan's fine, but I was still experiencing pain. And the same goes for horses. So just because we can't find anything doesn't mean there's anything. And there's so much that goes into it. Like, you'll be aware of it, maybe like muscle myopathies, like genetic disorders, stuff that we can't really check for, but are there. Food intolerances, like hoof problems. So yeah, when I see that term, I personally don't like it.
So I'm becoming aware and in the realm of this is complex. And, the work that we have spoken about with Lily and Tom, the barefoot farrier, and all of the amazing people that we're starting to have these communications with through this podcast and through the work that I do and the work that Rhi is now, delving into a bit more. I think I know the answer to this question, not how I would answer it, but I'm interested to hear how you would answer it. What would you say to somebody who, they are like, this horse is starting to tell them something. They don't know what. They have done the back, the teeth, the saddle. They have done those things, but they are aware that maybe they haven't got all of the answers. Are there some sort of places that you would generally go to encourage people to check, and some things maybe that they could be doing that you think are really really valuable?
Yeah. For me, I would say posture. Even if the x-rays are clean, how is the horse standing? How is the horse feeling in its body? I'd say reaching out to other professionals. It is okay to get a second opinion. Just because your vet says everything's okay doesn't mean another vet may not find something or may have experience. So with me, my vets were great, but to get the answers for Bronte, we had to go through a referral vet. So x-rays weren't cutting it. She needed a full body bone scan. So I'd say look at their posture and their behaviour, get a second opinion. And if you haven't already watched a video, I would recommend doing so. Sue Dyson, she has a video on the 24 behaviours of pain in a ridden horse. And some are so subtle, very, very subtle, that if you weren't aware, you would just brush it off as being young or, having a bad day. So if you haven't already had a look at that, have a look. It's on YouTube, it's free. And then you may then be able to say, actually, my horse does that, so I'm going to go get this second opinion with this referral vet. But there's so many things out there. So it is hard. I do agree. It is hard trying to find what the problem is.
And if are there any things that you do with Remy that you're doing to kind of future-proof him in some ways? Like, you've had this cool opportunity, I suppose, to have a horse from a very young age, because he was only a year old when he came into your life. Are there things that you have done in his work, let's call it what it is, before you've never ridden him, obviously. He's never been tacked up or long lined or any of those things that are so often considered the pre-training to riding. Can you tell us about some of the small things or the big things that you do with him that have, you think shaped him to hopefully then be a happy, healthy, potentially ridden horse if he chooses that in his future?
Yeah. Making sure that his body feels good before I ask anything of it. So even though he's young, he gets regular body work. Before we've even done any long lining or anything like that, he had his wolf teeth taken out, and I spoke to you a lot about that experience, Miri. So making sure that the slate is clean before we do anything, and then the training that we do is very short, sweet, it's positive. I always make sure that I'm setting him up for success and that he's having a good experience, so he doesn't have any reason to not trust me or to not enjoy the work that we hopefully will do in the future. So it's a bit of both, really. It's his body and his mind. If he's having a good day, we'll train. If not, we'll go back to it another day.
And we said before you joined, I called it a chaos tunnel, which is not the right not the right term. I think it's a chaos chute, is it?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that and some of the other stuff that you do with him.
Yeah, so the chaos chute is from something called intrinsin, and the science behind that, the intrinsin work, is where we can kind of make horses really robust to try and proof them from injury in the future, I guess. So the chaos chute is where the horse would be at liberty. They are going through these obstacles, but it's just a mash of obstacles basically, and it increases their proprioception, their body awareness. And the idea behind is that we make a really robust horse, so should something happen, they know how to navigate that. They know how to find their feet. They know where their balance is. They know not to panic in these situations, and that they're free to move at a pace that feels good for them. So that's just a really simple exercise of like a mashup of stuff. And Remy goes through the shoot, and it's good for his brain and it's good for his body.
I was just reflecting on some of the language you use there. Isn't it funny? And I don't mean to pass judgment, but isn't it funny that some people's way of preparing a horse for not getting injured is tying them to a post until they stop panicking or moving, or hobbling their front legs, which is when they tie the front legs together, so that if they ever got stuck, I'm doing air quotes, they wouldn't panic. Isn't it funny how that can be someone's idea of training, and there's this whole other piece which is like, it's at liberty, they're doing it at their own pace, they get to figure it out, like, just
I agree.
I think the word funny is hard, isn't it? Because I know, like,
obscure.
Well, I think it's horrific, to be honest, is the word I would use. And there is a lot of that, and Hayley and I share videos every now and then, and of horrible things, and every now and then both we talk about it, that we go and comment stuff, and that is, you know, and then we get ourselves in trouble because people on Facebook start shouting at us. No, not for you, Rhi.
I just can't deal with that kind of... I just don't deal well with... I'm much better now, but, like, people just yelling at me on the internet just brings me massive anxiety. I just don't like it.
Same.
And I find myself checking for comments that people have said. Like, there's been times when someone said something on my post and I've responded to them, gone away, and then immediately been like, oh my God, what are they going to say back? What are they going to say back? And I just don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy having to defend my point of view.
I think I'm quite good at, like, saying something quite out there and then just forgetting I ever did that. I don't look at my notifications enough. Anyway.
And then finding things difficult because there's a lot of different worlds out there. You know, there's people like myself who try and be as ethical as possible and always have the horse in mind, and then there's other people that definitely don't. And me and Miri do get in quite some bother online. I'm the same though. I'm trying not to comment anymore. Like, unless somebody specifically comes to me asking for my opinion or for help, I just think just scroll past.
But interestingly, I said this to you before we started recording. We were just chit-chatting away, and I said about how I put up the video of Harley kind of really having a hard time out hacking and rearing. And in the video, I kind of yell at him and I'm like, don't do that, or something like that. And I put on the video, disclaimer, I wouldn't yell at Harley now the way that I did in this video. When we know better, we do better. And Hayley liked it. And I said before we started recording, I was like, oh, you liked the video. I thought you would be like, that was bad. And Hayley was like, no judgment. Like, if we can't improve, what's the point, right?
Exactly. For me, it's about personal growth. Like, I think that shows a lot about you, that you could look back and reflect, and you now do things very differently. Like, we've all been there.
Yeah. And I do think, and Miri and I talk about this a lot, that we never want it to feel purist. And actually, maybe this is a good point to talk about some of the challenges that you've had with Remy, because I know vets have been a bit difficult, and
chickens.
Yes.
Chickens, and you know, recently a whole big change. So talk to us about some of that.
Yeah. So I'm the same. I'm definitely not perfect, but what I do pride myself on is that I can self-reflect. So if something doesn't go good, like the chickens, I might be a bit upset at first, but then I can think back, reflect, and be like, right, well, I have a plan going forward. Even if I have to speak to other people, other professionals, other friends, like, I definitely don't just take my own advice. Every day is a learning day. But for me, what's important is that we actually care enough to do so. And I think that says a lot about where we're going as equestrians, because there's definitely a shift happening. So there has been hard times with Remy. He had a very difficult castration, which then made him vet phobic, and cooperative care is great with getting him to a good level. But if he does go over threshold, especially with a vet and not myself, it can be really difficult to navigate that. And I'm quite open about that on socials. But I try and take a step back. So when we had a really difficult vet visit last time, I had to intervene and advocate and say, like, can we please just stop? Like, can we please just stop and revisit it another day? And it was really difficult to do that because I felt like I was intervening on a professional, but we weren't going to get what we needed. We needed bloods. We definitely weren't going to get bloods. So I intervened, stopped. We put a plan in place, and we're going to have a bit of a settling down period. We're doing more cooperative care and try again. So it's just always trying to go slow and talk for Remy because I'm his voice.
And you've talked about that, about how uncomfortable it can be to advocate for your horse, because I can totally imagine going up. I mean, I bet there are people listening to this being like, God, I just would hate going up to my vet and being like, this isn't happening, we need to come back another day. How do you approach situations like that? Not just knowing that, like, this is what I want to do for my horse, but like, how do you find the courage? What language do you use? What advice do you give to people in that situation?
Yeah, I just try to be as diplomatic as possible. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to be assertive with it, but just to say, look, I know my horse, I know his history, he's really struggling with this. I don't want you to get injured. I don't want me to get injured, because that's the way that it was heading with the vet. He was just so at the threshold. And just saying, like, look, can we try something else, or can we have a little bit of a break? And it is difficult at first, but the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with having these conversations, and it does become easier. So yeah, just try and stay neutral, try and stay calm. And it's not just about your horse, it's also about your safety and the safety of other professionals. Nobody wants anyone to get hurt.
Absolutely. I remember my coach Claire, who guided me, has brought me to the world of groundwork. There have been times when I've said to her, I've got this really sensitive horse and it's this or this is happening, and she said, you know, always come back to safety first, because I got really badly hurt a while ago now, and this horse really frightened me and has really left me frightened, actually. And I went to Claire and I said, I'm really finding myself wanting to start the young horses, like go through all the backing process, go all through the groundwork process, but then that very first bit when I want to sit on board, I'm finding myself wanting to go back to an old pattern of wanting to maybe be on the yard. So my yard is poorly designed. The arena's really long way away from the stables. And she always said to, and I said to her basically, like, is that okay? And she said, look, at the end of the day, we got to find ways of doing things where everybody feels safe, because in that moment with the vet, you would have felt unsafe by that point. The vet would have felt unsafe, and Remy would have, and you called him Harley then, Remy would have felt very unsafe at that point. So what in that situation can everybody do to help everybody feel safe again, or be safe again, not just feel safe? And it was such an important reminder, and it's one that I remind myself of all the time, because safety is such an innate thing that we have to remind ourselves of, like, offering it, basically. And it's nervous system regulation at its heart, really, is what it is. But when everyone's dysregulated, nothing good is going to come from that situation. Yeah. And there will be cases with horses where you can overthrow them and you pressure them and you make things happen. But, you know, there is a world where those things don't have to. And it's so wonderful to see you advocating for that, Hayley, and talking about that so publicly, because I think it gives people a lot of permission to notice, say, oh, my horse is really struggling with this. Can we, you know, because we do trust our professionals, don't we? And often people will say, okay, well, the vet says it's the right thing. But often that vet maybe feels like that's what we want them to do, or that they just need to get it over with. And actually the reality is, I think a lot of the time, if they could step back and say, actually, this is unsafe, horse is over its threshold, let's all slow down, it's complicated, but it's great to hear that it is being so openly discussed now in certain areas.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, also, advocating for safety will stop us. I saw this great article the other day that was about how so much of fear is disguised as control. When we get frightened, we take up more rein, we put a stronger bit in, we add tack, we get stronger. And there's so many moments, I think, that people go, oh, I wish I hadn't got that frustrated, I wish I hadn't shouted at him, I wish I hadn't got upset. And so much of that, if you really dig into it, is fear. The reason you yelled at your horse is because you're frightened. The reason you put in the stronger bit is because you're afraid of the speed, etc. And so if you can take the fear away by making it safer, you are so much more unlikely to go over your own emotional threshold and do things that you regret, which I think is a powerful thing to recognise.
Yeah.
Amen, said in the least religious way possible. So, Hayley, you have recently moved Remy. Very recently, in fact, literally last week. And I wonder whether you could touch on a bit. Well, the story is very cool.
So Remy was having a little bit of a hard time in his previous environment, and I noticed a lot of behaviours that indicated he wasn't happy. Just subtle changes, but he was refusing to go in the field. And then when he was in the field, he was hanging around at the gate a lot of the time, and there was a lot of resource guarding going on in the field, not just Remy, but the rest of the guys were feeling a bit upset. And it was impacting his life, so we weren't able to do any training. And then it was impacting my life because I knew that he wasn't happy. So I had a little bit of a chat with Miri because we're great emotional support friends. And she at first was like, why do you think he isn't happy? Explained everything, sent some videos of, he's refusing to go in the field, but he's happy enough to come in the stable. And she agreed, I think it's time for an environment change. Do you want me to post online? I was like, yeah, go for it. So Miri put a story post on just saying, looking for a friend, looking for livery, and the most cool opportunity ever came up. Like everything that I have wanted. Yeah, everything I have ever wanted just was on this message. Miri was like, this is really cool. This is really cool. Have a look. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. I was very nervous because I had to make the first initial point of contact. I don't like doing that. I had to make the contact, but then afterwards, everything just fell into place. This lady is very, very much on the same wavelength as me. It's close to home. It's perfect for Remy. So we moved. We've been there a few days now, well, since Sunday. So we're coming up to a week.
I have a question. Because you're so in tune with Remy and you notice little signs, and I think he knows that he can be like, hands up, not comfortable. Do you think if you had trained Remy in a traditional way and maybe pushed him through some of his thresholds, you know how sometimes horses will stop and people will be like, come on, let's go, da-da-da. Do you think he would have given you those signs where he was like, I don't want to go out? Or do you think he would have pushed through it and the signals would have been the resource guarding, the being at the gate, and then maybe actually probably an escalation in an injury or a fight with one of the horses?
Yeah, I think if I didn't start him in the way that I did, he would have suppressed his emotions a lot more than he does. He knows that he can say no. He knows that he can say no and there's no consequences come to that. So I feel had I started him in a traditional way, he probably would have masked everything until more issues started cropping up, injuries, it affected more of the training rather than just the daily life. So I agree with you on that one. I think because of how he started, he knows that he can tell me there's a problem and that I will sort it out for him.
I have a second edgy question. Sorry, Miri.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say this is really interesting, and I call it when you give that to a horse that's older, I call it the great unraveling.
Yeah.
Because these horses, they come and they're like, I'm fine. I'm like, you're not fine. They're like, totally fine. I'm like, honestly, I know you're not fine. Please just start telling me that you're not fine. And they're like, a bit quiet for a few. And then they go, oh my God, I've got so much to tell you. And then they turn the volume up to 300,000 and they scream in your face for like a good fortnight. I've got so many problems. I can't believe never ever told me that I had the opportunity to tell you this. And it's like that prawn in Finding Nemo, and he's like, my wife's got one leg, and and it's just like this like monologue of information that they start giving you, and it's really ugly and it's really hard, and sometimes I'm like, oh God, it's kind of like when you ask someone if they're okay, and you've kind of got the capacity for them to say, yeah, I'm okay, small talk, and then they actually say, here you go, and they trauma dump a lot on you, and you weren't necessarily expecting it. I'm always expecting it, so it's totally fine, but it's like a big thing, and it's so cool that you're never going to have that, because from this early age it didn't you've never had to get to that. I remember Blondie's great unraveling. It was volatile. I couldn't catch her. She was like, no, you've given me the opportunity to say no, can stick it right up your ass, far, a long way. Let it come back out your mouth. I'm not interested in having any kind of communication with you. And it took a lot of time, a lot of consent, a lot of learning from me, and it's remarkable. But I do think that the sooner that you give it to your horse, the quieter they have to be, the quieter they can be with what they say to you. They don't have to shout, they can whisper, and that's a beautiful thing. And well done for advocating for Remy in that moment, because who knows if you had waited till the end of the winter to make this decision. And actually, I know how nerve-wracking that was for you, because you've been there for a long time, and you know previously it was a really good place for you. But hearing you talk about how that move has been so positive in lots of ways, not just in the sense of, you know, it was a brave thing to do, but also it was the right thing to do, and you had to do it quite quickly, and all of those things kind of, again, they rolled on. But yeah, really cool. You were going to ask a question, Rhi. Sorry for interrupting.
Well, we kind of got onto it, but it was interesting. We talked about Remi having the opportunity to say no. I think some people, and I think I probably would have counted myself in this maybe not a couple of years ago, a little while back, a long time ago, but like they're afraid to open that communication with their horse because they're afraid that, or they're told, well, if I let him do whatever he wants, in quotes, he will bite me and kick me and run all over me and hurt me, and they're afraid of like,
and not respect me is often
exactly
the word,
yes,
that
and I won't be the boss. And so have you ever, I mean, Miri talked about it there, the great unraveling, but have you ever experienced with a horse where they've just gone, yeah, great, I'm just going to walk all over you, and da-da-da. It's slightly a trick question because I think the answer is no, but I kind of want to give people the the comfort of like, you're just changing the conversation and giving them different tools. They're not just going to suddenly, they're not built like that, horses.
No. So I haven't experienced that, no, because surprisingly, unless there's the great unraveling, it tends to go the opposite way. You know, they take you by surprise, where actually they say yes a lot more. And if they do say no, it's a quiet no, and it's not a volatile no, like, you know, what Blondie's was like what B's was like. And if there is huge no's and volatile situations, then there's something that we're missing. It might not be pain. It could be the situation, the environment, what we're asking. We've missed something. But if there are a lot of no's, why?
I love it.
And I think as well, I think I'll go back to a little bit what I was saying, because I realise that it maybe sounds like horses come and then they have a horrible time. That's not really what I meant. I think I mean in the sense of like, when you start to give them the opportunity to tell you how they feel, then everything can become quite sort of vulnerable for a while, because they're suddenly like, I've got a lot to say, I didn't know, I was a bit shut down before, now I've got lots of things to say all of the time. And it can seem a bit like this kind of chaotic shift, and it's like that, what do we read? And in that moment, my one piece of advice for people, if they, you know, move their horse to one place to another, and they see this, or they start advocating for their horse, and then they see this unraveling and things start to kind of go a bit the wrong way before they go the right way potentially, is to like make sure your horse's needs are met in as many ways as you possibly can really early on. So like forage, freedom and friends, I know that we talk about that is actually the only 3 things that your horse actually cares about. Like, okay, maybe they care about relationship too, but if they have friends, other horses, if they have constant access to forage and they have freedom to move their feet and be safe within that, those 3 things are enough. Like you've given Remi in this change, like you've given him freedom of movement, you've given him constant access to forage, and you've given him some new friends to start regulating with. Those are the 3 things that you will give him until he is ready to then do anything else after that.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to give, you know, I'm always mindful on this podcast to like make sure we don't just like say loads of information and then not give people any kind of a structure to follow in that moment if they find themselves in that place. But yeah, I think that was again a bit of a digression in a further direction, and I've forgotten what else we were talking about.
Well, no, it's a good point though. I mean, what did you do to prepare Remi for that move? Because I presume that you hadn't really travelled him before this moment, right? So how did you prepare him for the big move and introducing him to new friends, and especially a horse who, I hope it's all right to say, but if he started his life without other horses, was probably started a bit dysregulated. Is that the right word? But you know, anyway.
Yeah, and socially challenged. Yeah. So in any other circumstance, if there was more time, I would have prepared Remi with the transport, with the training that we do, you know, getting him used to it before we actually move. But because of the circumstances, we moved quite quickly because it was such a good opportunity. It was one that kind of needed to happen straight away. So I did a lot of preparation in his body, so made sure that his gut was supported and all of his needs were met as much as I could do at the old place, so that he had food on his tummy and he was feeling as safe as he could be. And then I hired a professional transporter and I told her everything about Remy. He's never travelled before. He was feral prior to me. Luckily, it wasn't a long journey. And we decided to travel him loose so that he, felt like he could move. He wasn't going to get stuck. He wasn't going to panic with the partition. So there was no prior transport preparation. And the transporter actually said, he is a credit to you because he is so willing. She was like, he's more willing than some experienced travellers. Yeah, he didn't go on straight away, but there was no big escalation. We spent 10 minutes looking at the ramp, on he went. He moved around a little bit, but he came off the box bone dry. He wasn't sweaty. And I think it's because he knew he was safe and, I'd prepared him as much as I could. And then when he got there, it was very much like he was seeking friends and his friends were wanting to know who he was. So they kind of met each other over the fence. But then after a few days, they're all together now. They're still working things out, but there's nothing crazy happening and he's settling in really well. So
can you tell us a bit about the actual environment he's moved to? Because it's not a standard livery yard, is it?
No. So he has gone to a track system. So he's gone from living on a traditional livery yard with stables and a paddock and living in a herd to living in a very close herd of 3 horses on a private track system. Yeah. So he's joined 2 horses that are a very established pair bond. So that's where the little struggle is. Remy's wanting to get in and they're very close knit, but in time they'll be a nice 3. To a track system where he's got shelter, he's got constant forage, he's moving around a lot more, there's constant enrichment for him, and already I've noticed a change in his body, and a lot of people online have said his face looks different, his aura seems different, because his needs are met already in the first few days.
Love it. Bless him.
We haven't really touched on track systems yet on this podcast, and I think we will hopefully maybe get somebody on at some point to talk about them. We're a bit scared because sometimes people who run tracks are a bit like, purist. This is the only way, and I know that you don't believe that it is the only way. I know that for a fact. There's lots of wonderful ways that you can keep horses, but can you tell us a little bit about why you believe, why this was a good choice for you at this point? Because of the track element of it, I suppose.
Yeah, just to chime in at what you said at the beginning about being one size fits all, I try to be everything but that, because I feel like when you are like that, you actually push people away. So if I said everybody has to have a track system, everybody has to be barefoot, it puts people off. Well, actually, if you just invite them in slowly and document changes, you might not be able to have a track system, but why not manage your field in this way? That's how we can make a better shift happen. And that's how I got into it. So I used to be all my horses were shod, they were in a traditional pasture. I used to look at track systems and think it was quite cult-like until I found the right ones and researched into why they are so beneficial. So a track system is designed to keep horses moving around. They have to move to seek food, water and shelter, but by doing so it's great for their body, it's great for their feet if you do want to keep them barefoot. Why I wanted it for Remy was he's a good doer already and he was getting a little overweight. Yeah, we weren't in work, but he was carrying a lot more weight than he should, and he wasn't satiated at all, so he was seeking out ways to kind of keep himself occupied, but they weren't good. Ripping rugs all of the time, ripping other horses' rugs, generally just seeking out trouble. And what people would look as a naughty horse, I knew it was a horse that wasn't satisfied. So by having a track where he's constantly moving, he can forage on the trees, he can find the hay station, he can have a scratch on the post, I thought that is what that horse needs. And so far, he has really, really flourished, and it's early days, so it's only going to get better, really.
Hayley, you no doubt know that this question is coming. But I have a question that I ask everybody at the end of this podcast, and the question is, if you had one thing that you could ask... No, let me try again. If you had one thing that you could say to every horse person in the world, and they had to listen, what would you say?
Listen to your horse. All behaviour is communication.
Lovely. I'm so glad that multiple people are starting to say the same thing in some ways, because you know, if people hear the same thing enough times, they'll start believing it. And
100%, it resonates. It resonates.
Yeah, it does. There's a really good saying that I like to share, and it's that your horse isn't giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. And that's something that I live by. You know, don't take it personally, just see why your horse is feeling that way and help them through it. And it always works out in the end.
Oh, thanks,
Fantastic.
Hayley, so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
What a wonderful conversation. If people would like to find you on social media, where can they do so?
On Instagram and TikTok, my handle is BL Horsemanship.
Wonderful.
Lovely.
Oh, well, another week of wonderful conversation, Rhi.
Yeah, I loved it. And I think so lovely to have someone like you on, Hayley, and for have people to be able to hear that you're human and that you, for example, the transport thing, you were like, I'd have liked to have prepped him for it, but I couldn't do as much as I wanted to. And I think it doesn't have to be perfect before you start. No. Just start and then see what happens. You know, I think that's really important for people to hear, even when, you know, because I think people hold people like you on a pedestal in a good way. But also I think it's nice that, like, to give people confidence of, like, you can just muddle through for a bit and see how you get on and learn. And yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, be human. Yeah. Yeah. Because we are human. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not robots, and people expect
No.
it sometimes looks like that on the outside, doesn't it, from social media perspective. Well, thank you so much, Hayley, for joining us, and we will see you all next time. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye for now.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.